Hi, this is Robert from Lounge Audio. We get a lot of emails asking about what is the sonic difference between LCR Mark III and LCR Silver. LCR Silver will give you much more transient response, resolution, and frequency extension than LCR Mark III. So what does that do for your listening? Well, one thing it does that people notice right away is you hear more of the space around the instruments. So what does the space around the instruments mean? It means that the incidental sounds, when you're recording, let's say, a violin in a room, you hear the violin itself, and then you also hear the room interaction with the violin. LCR Silver will pick out those two elements much better than LCR Mark III. Also, you get more of a sense of what's called PRAT, pace, rhythm, and timing. So all those elements of the better resolution, the better transient response, better frequency extension, all add up to you having hearing a better settling in of the beat, or the groove of the song will be more apparent to you. So anyway, let's go over some specific albums that I want to talk about when you're listening to LCR Silver and what you will hear. So here's the Beatles White Album remix. This album is a great set of recordings. Of course, it's the White Album. So the White Album is a lot like a greatest hits album because all these songs were done at different times, different setups in the same studio, and sometimes different studios. It's kind of all over the place. And so the recordings can be kind of drastic from one to the other as far as, one recording will have a lot of high end, another one will be quite soft, another one will be quite overdriven to the point of distortion at times. And with LCR Silver, you really hear those differences as you're playing through the album. It might be a bit shocking at first, but once you get used to it, it's actually quite nice because it gives each song more of its own sonic character as you go from tune to tune. Also, what's been noted in forums, and I noticed it too right away when I listened to it, is Paul McCartney's bass. Paul McCartney's bass is brought up quite a bit in this album. Some people have even said that it sounds a bit bloated to them, and that could be considered as a truth. But when they brought up the bass in this, it brings it way up front, and you may not be used to hearing it like that from the way past pressings are. But LCR Silver is able to handle that kind of dynamic range a lot better and bring out Paul McCartney's bass. And this is one thing that happened to me is when I listened to this album, is I went, wow, Paul McCartney's really a better bass player than I even thought he was before. Not that I thought he was a bad bass player before or anything, but I really got an appreciation of his bass playing on this album. So let's go to another album. This is a guilty pleasure album, which is Catherine and Tennille. This is the one with Muskrat Love on it. So this album is kind of special in that it's pressed by a record pressing plant called Monarch Records. And they did some great vinyl pressings. You go look at Discogs on Monarch Records, and some of their albums are quite expensive. When you listen to this on LCR Silver, you really get a feel of the fabulous mid-range and the high-frequency extension that this album has. And by the way, just as you appreciate all the different cuts on the White Album, the same with this album. You probably haven't heard it, if you just listened to the radio in the 70s, you didn't hear many of the cuts off of this album on the radio. Only like Muskrat Love and I think one other one were commonly played. But the rest of the cuts on this album, you really get an appreciation when you listen to it on LCR Silver, as far as the performances, the depth, the fabulous studio techniques that they did. And so we'll go to one other one, which is back to the Beatles, kind of. Well, back to Paul McCartney, which is this live cut of Coming Up, which is the Live at Glasgow Coming Up cut. It was played on the radio like crazy in the latter part of the mid-70s. So what LCR Silver does for a cut like this is, first of all, you have the audience interaction with the band playing, and because you get a better sense of space in instruments, well, when you have the audience there too, you get a better sense of space with the audience. So it sounds like the audience are there participating, but you perceive them more as being out away from the stage, out there, out there beyond where the microphones are pointed to, and you can hear people yelling and stuff like that and clapping, and it's fabulous. Also, this was what's called a soundboard recording. This was not intended initially to be released as like a live album cut. So the stereo spread on it isn't the greatest. And when you listen to this, what stereo spread you do have is preserved by LCR Silver much, much better than it would be on LCR Mark III. So you get a sense of the instruments there on stage with the sound staging spread of the instruments much, much better. And it really gets you the urgency of this song, which is a great hit tune, by the way. So anyway, so that's coming up, Paul McCartney. And that's all I have today about the LCR Silver. Thanks for listening.